This video, we're going to look at the combo box. The combo box can hurt your brain just a little bit because it actually uses a model, and it is actually a model view component, but there's no delegate. You'll see what I mean here in a minute. So I know you've seen this before. This is a combo box. You just simply have a list of options you can click down and select. And of course, we can bind a custom model to it. So we can have not just someone's name, but their age. You notice this one we can edit and this one we cannot. So we can actually, and I'm going to demonstrate, let's add Bob. Let's say Bob is a newborn. Bob was just born today, and now Bob exists in our list. So let's see what it takes to make this work. First things first, let's flip into design view. Let's go to imports, and we're going to import Quick Controls, whatever version you feel comfortable with. I'm going to go to our form editor, and the first thing I want is a column. I'm going to drag and drop. I want to grab him, and I want to put him right in the center there. And then I want some labels. And then I want some combo boxes. Notice there's a combo box, but there's not like a combo delegate like there was with the checkbox. That's where it gets a little bit confusing. I'm going to drag and drop him right here. And then let's just get him all the way at the bottom. There we go. Going to take this column and I want to modify the spacing. Let's put some 20 in there. And I'm going to grab this little handle and resize it. You notice how you can do something like this? Try to avoid that. Really what's happening is you have the bounds of your column and the controls are going out of bounds. So if somebody accidentally turned clipping on, well, that's right, they magically disappear. So try to make sure you have plenty of room there. All right, let's go ahead and name these. And some people are going to say, well, you need to select these down in the navigator. You see how when I select it in the navigator, it selects it over here. But if I select it over here, it selects it in the navigator. You can also do it via code. So if I wanted to do this label, see how it jumped? And I'm going to jump up to this other label. It does it automatically. So it doesn't really matter where you do it. I'm going to say LBL food. Let's call this CMB food. Oops, already exists. There we go. And let's call this CMB people. There we go. Now that I've got my ID squared away, I want to stylize this guy. And I'm going to say selected item. I want to select a color. Let's make this red, because why not? And let's say I also want this to be bold, and let's make it just a smidge taller. Maybe not that big. Let's go with 12. There we go. You notice how sometimes the interface wigs out a little bit, and it just gets confused what it's supposed to be doing. I'm going to make this 10, just make it a little bit smaller. There we go. Now let's say you want to take this style and copy that. Well, the easiest way to do it is just simply go in here. And yes, good old copy and paste. It's probably the fastest, easiest way of doing that. We're going to take this combo box here, and I'm going to show you, hey, how to put items in there and how to tell when those items have changed. And if you kind of hunt and peck through this interface over here, you're not going to see any sort of real helpful, intuitive way of doing this. You're going to kind of fumble through all this and go, well, how do I put things in here? Well, really what you need to do is flip over to the text editor, and I'm actually going to go into the bigger version. That way it's easier to see. Here's that combo box, and we're going to add a model. So yes, we are working with a model view control. Say pizza, steak, and let's call this pasta. Pretty simple, pretty easy. Now I want to know when that changed, and there's multiple ways of do this. Some people are just adamant that you select the control, then you go to the connections and you hit this little guy here, but then you got to either do it in the interface or you go into the text editor here and then you do it down here. The problem with using a connection is if you delete that combo box, you say, I don't want anymore, your connection's most of the time going to stay there. Sometimes it'll disappear automatically, most of the time it stays right there. So I tend to not favor doing that. I tend to actually do it right here in the actual code. And we're going to say on current text changed, or are we? Let's fix that. There we go. And we're going to say LBO food dot text and we want current text. Save and run. Ridiculously simple to work with here. Now let's work with something a little bit more complex. If you remember, let me pull up the example here. We are able to put people with their age, and we're able to add people. So what we're really doing is we're building our own custom data model. It's actually called a list model. And it gets a bit complex, but let's look at it. So we're going to say list model. Under the hood, this is actually being converted to a list model. We're going to give it an ID. And it's filled with list elements. Those list elements, we can have properties. And I'm going to say Brian and add another property. Let's call this age. This could be called anything we want. We call it fuzzy bunny slippers. We could call it I heart cats, whatever we want. But we're just going to, through the magic of copy and paste, do this. And let's say Tammy. And the dog's name is Rango. And we can't have a 45-year-old dog because that'd be a very old dog. So he's only 15, but he's still kind of an older dog. And a lot of people go, I figured it out. They save, they run, and there's nothing there. I don't know if the video is picking it up, but you can see it's highlighting there are 3 items there, but nothing's being displayed. And this gets a little frustrating. And this is typically when people go into Stack Overflow and go, what the heck? What you need to do is go in here, because we made a custom list model, you need to define a text role. And you notice IntelliSense is not helping us. And we just need to say the name of the property in the list element that it's supposed to pick up. So save and run. Suddenly it's displayed, and we have items in here. We could name that anything we want. For example, we could say name. As long as that text role aligns with an actual property, it will display just fine. I'm going to flip this back to text just so it's pretty self-explanatory. Now I want to say, all right, I want to know when the index changed. I'm going to scroll down so we have some real estate here. And current index change. I'm going to show you how to pull information out of that model. And I'm going to say LBL people dot text equals, and we're going to say model dot get, and we want to get the current index. So where am I getting this from? Well, this is the model right here. So we're just saying combo box, give me your model, which is this guy. And then current index is actually a property of the on current index change. It gets a little confusing, but basically you got to read the documentation. Or if you're ever confused, you just hit Control Space. And if that doesn't help, you just start typing and you say, well, there we go. Typically, it'll be like current index change. So whatever this is usually what you're hunting for. That's one thing I really don't care for too much about QML is sometimes it gets a little confusing about what you're actually looking for, and you got to go diving into the documentation. But anyways, now, because we have the model, we're going to get the current index. Let's just say this is our current index. We want to get a specific property. We're going to say the text. And let's also get the age. And then through the magic of copy and paste, we can just grab this. And at the very end here, I'm going to change that to age. So it's going to say model text, model age, save and run, see what that looks like. And sure enough, it's already doing it, but bang, bang. Now let's make this editable and see how we can actually put items in there. This gets a bit more advanced, and I'm going to just level with you. I thought about not doing this just because it will raise some questions. First things first, I'm going to set the current index to 2 just because I feel like it. Save and run, show you how that works. There we go. Notice how it didn't fire off the selection. So like it didn't do that. So you can do something like that if you want. But to add, it's actually very, very simple. We're going to say on accepted. And let's go ahead and add that in there. And I'm going to drop this down here, actually. But before we can really fire that bad boy off, we need to make sure this is editable. Pretty self-explanatory what that does. It means we can edit this list model. So unaccepted is when we've edited something and we're going to put it in here. And this gets a little bit involved. What we're going to do is we're going to say if find, and we want to find the edit text. The edit text is a string that's being passed to us, and we want to say if it's a -1, meaning it just simply didn't find it, then let's go ahead and add it. And we're going to say model.append, and let's go ahead and add this in. Now, the problem is we can't just say name or anything like that. We have to actually give it in the same format that it's looking for. And this gets a little bit frustrating. This causes some confusion. So basically, all you need to do is, you guessed it, grab this, paste it in there. We have our format, and then we just need to wrap it around and tell it exactly what it's trying to do here. So I'm going to say select that, double quote, and now let's change this to a comma. Select that, press double quote, and we can say edit text, and I'm just going to give it a default age of 0 because we're creating it today. Pretty simple. And then let's go ahead and go current index equals find, and we're going to say edit text, meaning what we're going to do now is we're going to move to the index of the item we just added. Seems a little confusing, but let's go through this again. So when we accept, meaning when they hit enter on the keyboard, we're going to say, hey, does that already exist? If not, then model append, add it to the end, this, and then current index equals, and we're going to go ahead and find that text we just added. We're not moving to the end of the model because that model could be sorted in the view, meaning this may not necessarily be at the bottom. It might actually be at the top. All right, let's save this. Let's run it. You notice how graphically now this is different. It's actually highlighted so we can go in and edit it, but it still functions. And let's go ahead and add Bob. Now, as soon as I hit enter, it's going to add Bob, and it's going to navigate to it, and there's the 0 we put in. And Bob now exists in the list. Pretty cool.